You know, if you want to get something done, you just have to stop worrying about it being perfect and you have to go and shoot it. Recently published a little short doc. It's called Frame Hunter. Today, this would be a really nice opportunity just to talk about how I went about making a little project like this. I'm going to go over how we made it, some of the approaches I took, some of the decisions I made, and hopefully I'm going to do this a bit more often with some of the works and projects that I shoot, just to give you a bit more of an insight into how I work and how I do stuff. The sort of stars aligned and I suddenly had time to shoot a little project like this. It features an amazing photographer and filmmaker called Juan Reeks to just shoot a little doc about him and his work. The whole thing almost didn't happen, but I just sort of pushed through and was like, I need to do a little personal project just for me to nourish the soul. I think that's quite an important thing with personal projects. It's better just to get it done, I think, than sort of try and make everything perfect and have the right amount of time and crew and stuff. Because if you always wait for the perfect moment, stuff just might not ever happen. There's a time for perfect, but there's also a time for getting stuff done. In terms of pre-production, I obviously knew what gear I was going to shoot it on, so we shot it on the Red Komodo. I just thought, because I was shooting on my own, shooting in RAW would give me a little bit more flexibility in post if I didn't quite nail exposure and stuff like that. Shooting on the Pavo, so I just brought 4 focal lengths, and then I brought a little Godox panel light and a tripod, a Zoom F3 for audio, and in the end I managed to sort of shitty rig up my shotgun mic. We had the MOFAGE POCO adapter, so that was giving me my ND, camera, tripod, light, and stuff like that. So little Godox panel light I've talked about on the channel before. It's great for this sort of, you know, small scale filmmaking. It comes with a softbox, small footprints. This was done with no crew, so I shot this all on my own. And I think with stuff like this, what I would say is like simplicity is key. The whole film is based around a central interview. Now, at first, I was actually just thinking I would just use the audio for this, and I've spoken about this before on the channel, just recording a solid audio interview, cutting that down, and then just putting visuals over it. But I actually liked the interview shot we got. Joan was really good at delivering to camera, so we got a nice centered shot with him just looking down a lens, and this isn't something that's always possible with interviews. I wouldn't normally thrust this upon someone who was inexperienced, but he's great at delivering to camera. He has his own YouTube channel, so he's used to it. By now I have a rough idea of how I would run an interview like this, but literally in the cab over, I just distilled all my thoughts into some notes on my phone, just to refer to when I was running the interview. Again, I've talked about this, but when you run interviews, you don't want to be too prescriptive with just referring to questions. Use your questions as a prompt. Okay, well, let's just start with an easy one. Why don't you just tell me a bit about who you are and what you do?
Cool. So my name is Join Hicks, formerly known as White Negatives.
As I start all interviews, I'll get the person self-identify, just tell me who they are, and then we'll start with a few questions just to get people warmed up. Even people who are great at doing interviews take time to warm up. One of the things I'll also do is get the person to introduce themselves again at the end of the interview, because this take always tends to be better.
Hey, my name is Join Hicks, formerly known as White Negatives. I'm an Angolan Portuguese photographer and filmmaker based in London.
You're trying to find sort of nice, abstract, descriptive, colourful descriptions of stuff that will go well with quite abstract visuals. We're obviously not going to be filming with him, you know, on set in a photography studio. So the stuff he's talking about, we don't want it to be too specific about a specific project, because as soon as you get super descriptive, then you tend to want to see the visuals to match that. So I was really interested in capturing his philosophy, his ethos, what he's drawn to when he's capturing images, how he got into image making, you know, where he came from, his journey, where that took him, and how he arrived to where he is today.
I tend to shoot quite a lot of like from below, wide angles as well, distortion, rawness. Just fell in love with film, the creative aspect.
And the interview is always a conversation, so I'm asking questions that I might not have written down. Always in my mind, I'm thinking about the edit and making sure I've got the right things that I need in my toolbox to make, you know, the film work. One thing I also wanted to do really quickly is also get a bit of dialogue that was outside of this interview technique. So I've talked about this before on the channel. I call it a sort of show and tell or walk and talk. So very briefly outside, I got Joan to assemble his camera, and I just checked him a few questions like why he likes shooting film over digital, and, you know, why does he keep doing it and stuff like that.
With digital, you have a memory card, you shoot, and yeah, you delete it later. Shooting with film, it just slows me down, like really. Like it makes me think about the frame, having 10 photos per roll is like every photo counts, you know?
And when I came into the edit, that just provided a really nice moment to bridge two sections where we didn't have to have music. It just gave us a bit of pause, a different setting and context, a bit of extra texture. We quickly reset, and then we went out and hit the streets of North London. Conscious that we only had 2 hours, so I'm trying to get as many different looking setups and scenes and sequences that I could in the time available with the equipment. Ideally, I would have had the Focus Pro and an easy rig, but because I was working and traveling on my own, I just couldn't bring all this extra kit with me. I just shot handheld on the Komodo, and then I think I brought the 28, 40, and 55 with me, thinking about overall coverage and making sure that we didn't overshoot on a wide and a tight, and that we had good range of shots. I guess it's important when you're doing stuff like this to get sequences, so a range of shots where he's pulling the camera up into frame, follow shots of legs and feet and walking, giving me a nice selection of footage to work with in the edit. Again, the more the better. Another important thing to mention is that we were shooting at the end of the day, so golden hour, so instantly, the light just lends itself to making everything look a bit nicer, a bit more interesting, and we were shooting with anamorphic lenses, so opportunity to get the sort of light flaring and, show off these lenses a little bit. The ND solution I used was a MOFAGE POCO ND adapter. When we were doing the B-roll and walking around outside, I decided to swap out the hard stop ND filters for the VND. For this whole shoot, it's all about making it doable, not overcomplicating it, because I think if it was a project that required a week of pre-production, getting a crew, it would have cost too much, I wouldn't have been able to afford it, it would just never have happened. So I think sometimes you just got to throw yourself at it and do it and work it out later. Obviously don't use that approach for every project or larger budget professional projects, but if you want to get something done, you just have to stop worrying about it being perfect, and you have to go and shoot it, because over time you'll get better and better and better, and then your absolute baseline of quality is just going to get better and better as you go along. I had sort of a rough idea how a film like this would pan out, someone talking about themselves, their ethos and philosophy, about how they approach things, a little bit of detail and color about who they are, and where they end up and what they love about what they're doing. I'll normally open most little films like this with a little quote, because I think it just draws people instantly into the film.
I'm always with a cap or something like that. So when I'm shooting photos, it's streaking it, I always flip the cap first, and then I'm just here trying to find focus. That's it. And you're ready to shoot portrait,
Which is like a little moment that gives a snapshot of who he is and how he works, and we instantly know he's a photographer, and then he shoots on all cameras, and he shoots people. I would use DaVinci Resolve's transcription feature, transcribe the whole interview, but even though I've done that, I'll still play back the full interview in real time, and I will then add markers into different points of the interview of bits I think are interesting or relevant to a certain section of his narrative. I'm pulling bits out that I think are interesting and then pulling them into another timeline. I see it very much as molding clay, and from all that sort of mass of material, themes and sections for the film start emerging. A bit about his style and what he looks for when he's shooting, his love for film photography, how he works and the sort of importance around connecting with people that he's shooting. So then we start building these distinct sections, maybe a minute long each, 30, 40 seconds. And then it's just about ordering. So what part comes first? I think another important thing to talk about in the edit here is one of the things I was looking at was pacing of audio. So this is something that harks back to when I used to work in radio. I think with interviews, when you first start cutting them, there's a tendency just to let them roll. But what I really did here was really massage the interview. So I cut a lot of the ums and ahs out, a lot of the gaps and breaths, and sort of cut it in time with music to provide gaps, to sort of stretch the moments out, to really sort of allow images to come through to the forefront.
When I'm shooting fashion, my eye is looking for something different in terms of angles, in terms of expressions. I tend to shoot quite a lot of from below, wide angles as well.
If we look at the edit here, you can see that I've just spaced out a lot of the audio, and it just provides a sort of quite nice rhythm that works in time with the music to provide a slightly richer and sort of holistic experience where the images, the audio and the dialogue are all sort of working with each other.
Buying the film, loading the film on the camera, developing the film, you just feel part of the whole thing, and it keeps me awake, and it keeps me sharp.
And a slightly more contemplative feeling to the edit, or slow stuff down to allow the viewer to take things in and watch stuff. And sort of presents the speaker as more of a sort of like a tour guide almost. It's something I'm trying to get better at, just sitting in silence a bit more. It does feature music. A lot of the time I've just taken stems, like drum tracks, and I fade them out and fade different tracks in. So hopefully it feels less like a sort of constant music bed and a bit more responsive to the edit. And then it seemed evident that maybe we could play around with the edit and, you know, add a bit of sound design, and when the images came in, add some subtle undertones of like nature or city sounds that would just be barely audible, but would just subconsciously, you know, add a bit of texture to the edits. I probably spent about a week on this edit, you know, long edit sessions where I just stayed up late, sat with the material, played around with it, took a break, came back to it the next day or a few days later. And again, that's what's really great about personal projects, when there isn't this pressure to get it done on time. You can sort of let stuff percolate a bit more and sort of give it a bit more time on the boil. This project in particular definitely benefited from that, because there were moments where I thought it was finished and I went away for a few days, and then I played it back again, and I sat down with the edit of the material, and I found new inspiration, new ideas, and saw things that I wasn't seeing before. I think personal projects are really important. You sort of have to make time for them or they'll never happen. When I post projects like this on the channel, I know they're never going to get loads of views. I know they're not going to be big videos that grow my audience and all of that, but they're really important to me, and I learn a lot, and I am improving my craft when I work on them. If I told myself I needed a crew, if I told myself I needed to light every sequence, it just wouldn't have happened. So my advice when it comes to making projects like this is just do it and worry about it later. Even if it does go completely wrong and you don't get the stuff you need, then you've learned that lesson, and next time you come around to it, you're not going to make the same mistake again. It just gives you an opportunity to make something for yourself, and that can be really refreshing, I find, and rewarding. You'll have something for your portfolio, for your work. You'll get to make it how you want to make it, and you won't be sort of bending to someone else's rule. Let me know if it was useful, if there's anything else that I missed out that you might find interesting when it comes to talking about projects I've made. If you've watched the documentary, please just give it a like and a comment. Those videos never tend to do as well as the sort of gear video, so it'd just be nice to help with the algorithm to give that a little bit of a boost. But yeah, I hope this was useful. I'm Ed, and until next time, see you later.